Hey everybody. So I was supposed to go live today, but I did not know that I had to be authorized to go live or something like that. And so I have sent that request in, but it could take a while. So I wanted to go ahead and just do a video and answer a few of the questions that I got. Well, I'm going to answer all the questions I got, but I only got a few. And if you think of any more along the way, feel free at any point in time to send me a message or put in the comments any questions you have about foster care. I'm going to answer a few of the basics right now through these questions. They were really good questions, and thank you to those of you who sent them to me. And then I will eventually be able to go live, hopefully. But yeah, so let's get started. So I've got 4 questions here. The first one is, what's the hardest part about fostering? For me personally, I think that the hardest part about fostering is the unknowns. It's just lots of things that you don't know and you might not ever know. You don't know what to expect in court. You don't know what to expect right after court. There have been multiple times now that we have headed into a court date thinking we know what's going to happen, and then that doesn't happen, or something completely different happens. Then there are months of sitting and waiting, feeling like nothing's being done, and you don't know what's going on, what's happening next, what are people thinking, how things are really going, because we really don't know. We know how the kids are doing, and we know as foster parents, we know how stable they are in our homes, and how medically and physically and mentally and emotionally, we kind of know that as far as how they're doing, but we don't know specifics of the case in general, how it's going, until you get to court, and then you find out things that you didn't know, or that the situation's not going how you thought. And so there are lots of unknowns with this. I was trying to think if there was anything else with that I could piggyback off of. But, I mean, really just the unknowns and not knowing. And it seems like every time you go to court, it's going to be another 3 to 6 months. And so till another court date. And so that can be hard and frustrating. And I think sometimes that time is needed. Sometimes it's not. It's definitely not anything where quick decisions can be made. It's just lots of unknowns and waiting. And when you think you know the answers, just you don't always. Sometimes, like I said before, when we go into it, we think we know. We're pretty sure, like 99% sure we know what's going to happen. And then something comes up and it doesn't happen. And so just prepare yourself for that. And if you're going to get involved in this. So yeah, those unknowns are hard. What are the basic requirements to becoming a foster home or foster parents? As far as here in our state, we're in North Carolina. Honestly, when you call in and you say, what does it take? You are going to have a background check. So I don't want to leave that out. There are, some things that they're going to rule out there. But honestly, as long as you have the beds and space and you're willing to, just as long as you have time to invest in these kids, they're going to want you to make sure they're getting to appointments, make sure they're getting, if they need therapy or anything like that. So you have to be willing to do that. And as far as space, I will say that our 2 biological children have always shared a room with our foster kids. We would not take in a placement where we did not feel like it was safe to. We have had a placement where it was not safe to, and we had to split that immediately. So have a backup plan there if you run into a situation like that. But our kids have always shared rooms with them, and there was a point in time where our biological son and daughter shared a room, and they were completely fine with that. I know a lot of that is going to boil down to your preference. I know some people don't want their kids to share rooms, even with their own biological siblings, and that's completely your preference. For us, we don't mind. I don't think it hurts kids to share a room. We have had our 3 girls in a room together for months, and they did completely fine. And now our oldest is quite a few years older than the 2 other girls, and so we did just put her in another room. But I think, as far as here, what they're looking for is, does everybody have a bed? Does everybody have a dresser, somewhere that they can put their belongings and stuff? So don't feel like if you're in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house that your house is too small. There are people that are licensed in apartments. They're, that's what they make bunk beds for. They'll be okay. Trust me, these kids are not concerned with the amount of space you have. They're concerned with having a stable, loving environment. So please don't think that your house isn't big enough or you don't make enough money. It'll work out. Just if that's something that's holding you back, don't let it. And then, the willingness. You have to be willing. If you're going to get involved in foster care, don't do it if you're not going to be willing to invest time and your emotional status and all of that in these kids. You're gonna have at least 1 monthly visit from a social worker. Then you have your GAL. Then if you're with a private agency, that's another visit a month. And then if you're therapeutic level, you're looking at 2 or more a month, possibly weekly visits. So just know what you're getting into there. And then continuing classes. If you are basic level, it's different. We're licensed private with a therapeutic agency, and so they have monthly trainings and stuff. So do your research there. Ask questions to other foster families. Make sure you know what you're getting into. Are you going to level basic or are you going to level therapeutic? Those are some good questions to research and look into there. What is the licensing process like? That depends on where you live. That depends on your agency. Ooh, the sun's coming in right there. Sorry, I don't know if that helps much. The licensing process. So, our story, it took us about a year to get licensed. Now, that is not necessarily normal. We are in a county that, I don't want to word this wrong, but doesn't necessarily need a bunch of foster placements. I think there are like 18 foster homes in foster families in our county, and only like 8 or 9 of them have placements. So with that being said, we decided to go outside of the county. So we went through a private agency. The private agency we started licensing with was, I think they were just very short staffed at the time. We liked them. We enjoyed working with them, but it was taking a really long time for anything to get done. We had completed our MAP training classes that you go through. That's a matter of a couple of months of trainings that you're going to go through, and then your CPR, first aid, all of that kind of stuff that you need to do. But after that, they weren't really getting anything done. And so we actually got to the point where we had hit our year mark when we started it. And so we had to go back through and redo paperwork because it's still not been completed. So at that time, we felt like it was best for us to switch over to a different private agency. And so we licensed with another private agency, which I'm not going to mention any names, because if I ever say anything about our agency, I don't want it to reflect poorly on them necessarily, or if you have a question about an agency that you're looking for and stuff, please send me a message. I'm more than happy to give you our opinions there. We have really enjoyed things. We've struggled with a lot of things with our agency, and I think that's just no matter who you license with. But anyways, by the time we got to them, our classes had been done, so they were able to get us licensed fairly quickly. I think generally maybe like 3 to 6 months, and that just depends too. If you go through the county, it's going to depend on what your classes. I know there's some counties that are more backed up for getting people licensed because their classes are full. Because you have a lot of people that go through classes and then never license, or they license and never take a placement or stuff like that. So as far as the licensing process, that's going to vary, again, depending on whether you're licensing basic through to do basic foster care through the county, or whether you're licensing therapeutic, that's going to take a little bit more. But if you have questions about that, you can send me a message or contact your county DSS office and ask them for the licensing, and ask them where they're at on timeline. What does it look like for a timeline to be a licensed foster family? Hopefully they should be able to give you some kind of answer for that. Private agencies, I think, are moving pretty quickly now. I'm pretty sure one family that we know, they just had theirs in less than 3 months. So it can be done pretty quickly. Hopefully you won't have over a year process like ours. Once licensed, what can we expect? That's a good question. I think that it's different for everybody. But what you can expect once your license comes in, you can expect to start getting phone calls from a placement coordinator. And we felt like for a while that we went a couple months. I shared this in one of our other videos, that we went a couple months and we're not getting calls for placements, but we were doing respite for them as well during that time. But then there's sometimes where we actually did get a couple calls for placements, but it was not situations where we could take those placements at the time. So you might start getting calls that day. You might get 10 calls that week, or it might be a couple of months, but you need to know that, the calls will come, and when they come, you need to ask lots of questions. Don't, necessarily just take, we have a 5-year-old boy. Ask questions. Is this, a few big questions I would ask. Is this their first time in foster care? Are they just coming into foster care, or are they being moved from another foster placement? Because that's a really important question. If they're just coming into foster care, what is known about them behaviorally, physically, medically, if there's any medical needs there? If you are taking in a child that runs away, you need to know that. What's this child coming in for? Are they coming in because of behaviors in the home? They're not going to give you but so much information, because some of that is the biological family's rights to not have all of their information released. But as far as information on the child, you can get that. And I would encourage you to ask as many questions as you can. If the child is coming from another foster placement, why are they being moved? If you have other children in your home, that's a question I feel like is important to ask. I think that kids need to be given a chance, and maybe they're just foster placement that they're in just didn't work out. And it might be best for them to move, whether it's on behaviors or whether it's on the foster family. It might be best for them to move. We have a child in our home that I'm very glad that child is with us now, because it benefited them greatly to move out of other placements. And sometimes that's not necessarily in part of the current foster families doing anything wrong. It's just, I don't know. We don't mesh with people sometimes, I guess. I don't know. I have to be careful how I go which way in that, because that could lead into a whole nother topic that maybe we'll cover one day. And then once you take in a foster placement, the biggest thing that I think was hardest to know there is these are strangers coming into your home. It's going to be awkward. We thought we will take in these foster kids and we will love them with all we have, and it'll just be instant love automatically. And that's typically not the case. Maybe if you take in a baby, it's a little bit easier, but especially older kids, these are strangers moving into your home. It's going to take some time to bond. It's going to take some time for them to be comfortable around you to be comfortable around them, to figure out house rules and how things are going to work in the home, and your whole family dynamic is going to change. And so as far as what to expect, I think that goes back to the unknowns. Just expect the unknowns, and be ready for it and be willing, but you can do it. These kids need need homes. If you have any more questions, please send them to me. I will be happy to do another video, and hopefully I can go live with you guys soon. You guys have a great afternoon. We have sunshine here. Yay! Thank you for watching and supporting me. I appreciate it a lot. Bye, guys.